You know, as a coach, there is absolutely nothing more frustrating than a great idea that just won't stick. So today, we're digging into a really powerful concept that gets right to the heart of that problem. How to make sure your tactics aren't just heard, but are actually learned and, executed when it really matters. It all comes down to how your players are wired to learn.
Oh man, we have all been there. You've got this brilliant tactical plan. You've cut up the video clips, you've designed the perfect drill for the training ground, and yet, weeks later, the team still hasn't really gotten it. It is one of the most maddening feelings in coaching, right?
So what if the problem isn't the tactic at all? What if it's the way you're delivering it? And that right there is the key. So often, the breakdown is a simple mismatch between how we, as coaches, teach and how our players are actually built to learn.
So to crack this, we got to understand the three main ways or channels that players use to absorb tactical information. It's often called the KVA model. That's kinesthetic, visual, and auditory. And trust me, every single player on your team has a preference.
First up, we've got the kinesthetic learner. I call them the doer. These are the players who need to feel the tactic in their bones. For them, watching a video is just theory. The real learning only happens when their bodies are actually executing the movement under pressure. You can't just tell them about a pressing trigger. You have to drill it and drill it and drill it until the action is pure muscle memory.
Then you have the visual learner, the seer. For this player, everything is about recognizing patterns. They need to build a mental picture first. Show them a clip of a perfect press and boom, you've just handed them the blueprint. But without that picture in their head, they're just going through the motions, completely disconnected from the why. And finally, there's the auditory learner, the listener. These players thrive on verbal cues. For them, simple, consistent keywords are everything. Shouting, press, cover, hold during a drill. Those words become triggers that they can instantly recall and execute in the heat of a match.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. We can actually measure this stuff. This brings us to a metric called the Learning Preference Score, or LPS, which basically turns all this theory into a super practical coaching tool.
So, what is this LPS thing? Well, think of it as a single score that gives you a snapshot of your whole team's learning DNA. It tells you the balance, or maybe the imbalance, of the doers, seers, and listeners you've got on your roster.
Now, a number like that, what does it even mean, right? It's just a number. So to give it some context, an analysis of 96 top European teams found the average score was 0.40. This gives us a really solid baseline to see how different teams stack up. And this chart really lays it all out. A high LPS, say around 0.65, tells you you've got a really diverse squad with a good mix of all three learning types. But a low score, something under 0.20, that means you have a much more uniform team, where pretty much everybody learns the same way.
Okay, let's make this real. The data shows us teams like Ajaccio and Clermont Foot are super diverse in how their players learn. Then on the other end of the scale, you have teams like Palermo and Middlesbrough that are way more uniform. Now this isn't good or bad, it just means they present totally different coaching challenges.
All right, so enough with the theory. How does this actually change what we do out on the grass? Let's get practical and translate all this into actual session design. So, picture this. You're coaching a team with a high score, like Ajaccio. You've got a real mixed bag of doers, seers, and listeners. If your training session is just a long video analysis, you're going to lose half the squad before you even step on the pitch. So, what do you do?
And the solution is, honestly, it's beautifully simple. You don't need more time, you just need to structure it differently. Start with a quick 10-minute video intro. That's for your visual learners. Then, the main part of the session is an opposed drill with lots of verbal cues, hitting your kinesthetic and auditory learners. And you wrap it up with a quick review to reinforce the lesson for everyone. One session, boom, 3 channels covered. But what about those uniform teams, like Palermo? At first, it sounds easier, right? But there's a hidden danger. If your team is, say, 90% kinesthetic, mostly doers, those few visual or auditory learners are going to get left behind. And when the pressure's on in a real match, guess who's the first to forget the new instructions? Yep, the players who never got the information on their preferred channel.
The fix here is so simple, and it's all about targeted support. You don't have to change your whole session. Instead, you just provide a little extra help where it's needed. For example, pulling your 2 visual learners aside for a private 5-minute video review. That costs you next to nothing, but the payoff, getting them totally on the same page as everyone else, is absolutely massive.
Okay, let's put a bow on this. Here's a dead simple 3-step playbook that you can take and literally start using with your own team tomorrow. First,
Audit your team. Seriously, just ask them. It can be a simple poll. Do you learn best by doing, watching, or hearing? Second, design every session to be multimodal by default. That video, drill, debrief structure is a great starting point. And third, support your outliers. Find those few players who don't fit the main group and give them that little extra boost.
So the final thought I want to leave you with is this. As coaches, we spend countless hours mastering tactics, formations, patterns of play, all of it. But the best idea in the world is completely useless if it just stays in your head. The real question is, have you mastered the art of teaching it to the unique group of players standing right in front of you?